Big Mike, normally this would be hard to believe on February 15th that spring training is like right now, basically, but it's like 60 degrees outside, Brody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It feels like summer, which means it feels like baseball. I'm so ready for it, bro.
I wouldn't say it feel like summer, but yes, sir. Look, this is look, South side and North side. We putting our differences aside, and we're gonna start our weekly Sunday crosstown conversation for the rest of the season, bro. This is about to be lit. We're gonna talk about who had the better offseason, the Chicago Cubs or the Chicago White Sox, and then we'll just talk about the different key acquisitions and so on and so forth, and just see where the conversation carries us. Join us in the comment section, but of course, we're gonna get into all of it right after the intro.
Welcome to Chicago White Sox Central, your number one place for all Sox news and content.
All right, what up, Chicago baseball fans? Welcome to the first crosstown conversation of the season. Chicago White Sox Central and Chicago Cubs Central combined. It's your boy Big Kev holding it down with Big Mike. How you feeling, my guy?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. Make sure that you guys like, share, and subscribe already. And make sure that you guys follow both sides because, Kev, it's really finna be a fun season for both teams. Different expectations, but fun seasons nonetheless, bro. I'm so pumped for this baseball season to get started, man.
Yes, sir. You're not lying about different expectations, right? The Chicago anything better than losing 100 games would be a win for the Chicago White Sox right now. Like they've lost 100 plus games in 3 straight years. So even if they have a 90 lost season, that's considered a win for the South Side.
Indeed. And of course, over on the north side, we are looking to finally take that next step and win the Central Division. You guys know I've talked about it. It was a goal set last year. It was a goal set from the moment Craig Counsell really walked through the door over there at Addison Street, where he said, listen, if we're not set out to win division titles every season, what are we doing here? So, I mean, there's an expectation, especially with signing talent such as Alex Bregman, especially, you know what I'm saying, trading for Edward Cabrera. You expect the Chicago Cubs to go very far this season. However, like I said, it really depends on a big major thing, bro, and that is health. Health is going to be huge this season for the Cubs.
Health is wealth. And the same thing over on the South Side before we get into the topics, bro. Like Chicago White Sox went out there and quietly snatched up some nice pitching. They got a bunch of young pitchers waiting in the wings in the farm system. We got a nice closer who has World Series experience for the Phillies and the Toronto Blue Jays, and Sir Anthony Dominguez. And then we also went and grabbed a surprise from over in Japan in Mooney. So like you're looking at a situation where the Chicago White Sox could definitely be a surprise team. Now, we're not expecting them to go out there and be world beaters, but they're not going to be getting beat on by the world like they have been the last couple of seasons. The young guys as well, man, we'll get into all of that. But first, let's just get this out the way. Which team had the better offseason? Because I got an interesting answer for this one.
So for me, honestly, quiet as kept. I knew covering the Cubs, I knew what the Cubs were going to do. I knew we were going to add another bat to replace Kyle Tucker, and I knew that we were going to get a big name. Now, did I think that name was going to be Alex Bregman? No. I did not know the Chicago Cubs are going to end up trading for Edward Cabrera. We had heard rumblings of it in years past, but they finally pulled the trigger, was willing to give up Owen Casey, sent him down to Miami. But to me, like I said, best offseason, I got to give it to the White Sox, bro. I mean, because literally for an organization that has been shrouded in such disarray for so long, y'all cleaned up in free agency and with the trades. I mean, I was very impressed with all the different aspects, all the different areas you touched. Now, again, you are not close to contending yet, but you have set some building blocks to really, really kick things into major overdrive and possibly have the South Side become a destination again for players who want to come and play.
Yeah, man. They've been busy. Chris Getz, I got to give him some credit, even though they've been making a lot of noise about the fact that he's been calling Acuna a switch hitter multiple times. He's not a switch hitter, but going out there getting Murakami, that right there is the biggest thing, right? Trading Luis Robert Jr. When it seemed like they were just dead set on keeping him, developing some of these guys that's waiting in the wings like Noah Schultz and Braden Montgomery. They're going to be called up at some point this season, but also getting what's his name, Austin, out here as well. Austin
Yep.
Hayes.
Yep.
That
Grabbing
was
him up
huge.
again.
Luis
Yep.
Angel Acuna. Listen. Bringing back Eric Fetty, who was solid when he was here a couple of years ago. Anthony Kay, Sean Newcomb. Like the list goes on and on. And the real thing that's going to help the Chicago White Sox, and the reason why I agree with you about which team had the better offseason, because the Cubs didn't really have to do too much to move their needle, right? They had to replace Kyle Tucker, and they had to get some more arms in the bullpen. But they were already a playoff team. They were already a game away from going to the divisional to the championship series, right? So
Right.
they just had to move little tinkers here. The Chicago White Sox are trying to change the direction of the organization. And it's going to take another year or two, right? Because we're going to get another year from Kyle Teal, another year from Edgar Quiero, another year from Shane Smith and all the young guys that stepped up last season, and of course, Colson Montgomery. But man, they're going to do much better at saving and closing games. They blew 24 games last season, 24 saves last season, and that alone was reason enough for them to lose another 100 games, right? So, yeah, the fact that they shored up their bullpen, they got some solid starters, and they have some solid closers and middle relief guys, and then they brought in Murakami to hit bombs, because I'm expecting him and Colson Montgomery to hit at least 30 home runs each, in my opinion. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch the White Sox, even though they're still going to lose a ton of games. But maybe we'll see though.
I like that you are setting expectations for this team. Sometimes I moonlight over on White Sox Central, like I said, filling in for Kev and for Hayes. And I did an episode where I talked about the fact that, I mean, I feel like sometimes White Sox fans set the bar a little bit too low. You should expect this team to be at least 30 games better. This, as presently constructed, 30 games better than what they were in years past. Now,
if they're 30 games better, that they're a playoff team.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And
that'd be crazy.
And to me, that's not asking too much. If you look at the division that they're playing in, if you look at how teams have taken a step back, especially with a lot of teams being scared to spend money since we're pretty much headed towards a lockout season in 2027, why not? Why not go for it all this season? Or why not try to be at your best this season? Why not, old man Reinsdorf, try to put as many butts in seats as you possibly can throughout the season, by making your team more marketable. You guys are the young guns of the MLB. And I really, again, I like the pieces that the White Sox have added. I think that they are going to be a fun team to watch. They may lose a lot of games, but they're going to be a fun team to watch. They're going to hit bombs. They're going to compete. They're not just going to get waxed like they have been over the last few years. But again, I'm still of the mindset. I believe the White Sox can absolutely be at least 30 games better. I think that they can do that.
You got higher expectations than me. I got them doing like another 20 to 23 game increase. From last year, they improved 19 games. And if they improve by like 21, 22 games, they'll be at least 500. And that's what I'm looking for. And yeah, we're going to add Rock Chalowski as well. We got the number 1 pick coming up. The Chicago White Sox do this summer. So they're just going to keep getting better. And they have a log jam at shortstop right now with just too much talent. Somebody's going to get traded or somebody's going to have to change positions then. So yeah, I'm very excited about pitching, because I think the positional players, they hit their stride for the Chicago White Sox before we get into the Cubs. They hit their stride last season after the All-Star break. If you don't recall, they were top 10 in several categories offensively, especially hitting home runs. And then they also won, I think, 23, 24 games after the All-Star break last season, which is like crazy because they lost, 100 games. And if they played as well as they played prior to the All-Star break, I mean, after the All-Star break prior to it, who knows what they would have done. So if they could take that momentum that they created going into the end of the back half or the back third of last season and carry it over into the start of this season and get off to a great start. Because is it just me or does baseball season start earlier and earlier every year? Like opening day is March 26th for the
Yep.
for the Chicago White Sox. So if they can get off to a good start in late March and early April and they play 500 ball, that could set the tone for them surprising some teams and maybe getting to what you're saying, a 30 game improvement, which would be great for those of us over on Shottown Sports Central covering all these different teams.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than covering a winner. And last year I covered a winner. I covered the Chicago Cubs all season long, and it was a blast, man. I'm telling you, to being on that side of things after having these disappointing seasons, where the team just did nations. You look at what they did with making a splash after a court, begin to appreciate the fact that winning seasons don't just happen. You have to build towards those. So on the White Sox side, if I could give you guys a bright side, for once, I believe you are finally back building towards winning something, playing meaningful baseball. And you got young players that want to become the face of Chicago, like a PCA, like a Caleb Williams. They want that shine like those guys. So I don't know if they're gonna get it because PCA is all world, but we'll see what happens.
Colson Montgomery, he's looking like he's gonna try. Braden is waiting in the wings. He's not on the big league roster yet, but Braden Montgomery, he's gonna be something. He's gonna be out there in the outfield too. But speaking of the run, man, like for the Cubs, last year they came up short, and mainly it was because they didn't really have enough pitching, and they had too many players relying on hitting home runs, especially in the playoff. Right, losing to Milwaukee sucks. Losing to Milwaukee's in the playoffs sucks even more. You had an
Anything
opportunity.
Wisconsin, losing anything Wisconsin in the playoffs sucks. Whether it's the Bucks, the Packers, or the Brewers, it sucks. It hurts.
It's awful. Sometimes I drive past Culver's and get mad. Like, fuck, get out of here, Culver's. Get away from Chicago, gang. I mean, y'all got good food, but when we in the midst of sports battles, I don't even want no Culver's. But you guys brought in Alex Bregman, a solid veteran who last season was with Boston, right? And they have a rookie over there who benefited a great deal from the tutelage of Alex Bregman. And it makes me wonder what type of effect Alex Bregman is not only going to have on young players like PCA, but just the organization as a whole, as that point guard type mentality, that extra coach in the clubhouse.
From day one, Kev, as soon as he signed his contract, his deal, he asked for every single player's number, and he asked to know the things that they've been working on this offseason so that he could contact them and talk with them each, one by one, about what they were working on during the offseason. If that ain't leadership, I don't know what is. And maybe that's a little bit what the Cubs are missing. And that's not to say Dansby Swanson isn't a leader, but Dansby Swanson made it clear he didn't like that nickname Lieutenant Dan's that he got in Atlanta. Like, he didn't like being that type of guy. So maybe he's just not that type of leader. However, Alex Bregman is, and he wants to be that type of guy. He is somebody that you call organization. Meanwhile, we see videos and proof of Kyle Tucker already in midseason form, holding his glove and watching everybody else do drills in LA, not really looking like he gives a damn at all. The Chicago Cubs got one, and I almost said traded up, but they didn't trade for him. But they win because they got a culture setter. And for a young star like PCA, this is somebody that he needs. Somebody that is already a superstar. Somebody that is one of the best third basemen in all of baseball. Somebody that can help not only him, but if the other guy will listen to him, he can help Matt Shaw too. These young players.
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah. If Matt Shaw can drop his pride and listen, he can turn into something very, very dangerous on a baseball
They
field.
had him out there in right field too,
Yep. Yep.
out there
Everywhere.
in Mesa. So like
Yep.
he's an athlete. We saw even last year, even with all of his faults last year, Matt Shaw. And even though I'm the Chicago White Sox person over here on Southtown Sports Central covering the Chicago White Sox, I watch the Cubs too. I'm one of those weird Chicago White Sox fans that also watches the Cubs. And Matt Shaw, even with him being sent down to AAA, brought back up, he was still a finalist for Gold Glove over at third base.
I
Even
mean,
with some, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, he was phenomenal at third base. His defense was everything. He just he when we needed him to come through offensively, he struggled. And so
Struck out a
I think
lot.
the yeah, so I think the Chicago Cubs went and addressed that. Kind of what you talked about. So two things happened with the Chicago Cubs last year. Like you said, they relied on the home run ball too much, and then their pitchers, they didn't have good enough pitchers really to get past the Brewers. And had they gotten past the Brewers, let's say things swing their way, they win the last game, they go on to play the Dodgers, right? Cool. They would have got mollywopped by the Dodgers
Swept.
because
Swept.
we were not ready. We were not ready. So, like I said, while it sucks losing to the Brewers, I mean, like I said, I also don't want to see them get to the National League Championship Series and it not even be a series. I got to sit here and do play-by-play and call, the team basically getting drenched 12 to getting skunked 12 zip, 13 zip 4 games in a row.
I
So
mean, it is the playoffs. I doubt they would have gotten beat that bad, but it wouldn't have been fun watching them get whooped on by the Dodgers. Which brings me to my next point about the Cubs. Do you think they overreached? They overreached with resign offering Shota Imanaga that qualifying offer, expecting other teams to kind of step up and pick him up because that he just took up a roster spot, and I believe the Cubs have basically lost faith in him. You saw it last season, especially after like August, between the middle of August all the way to the end of the playoffs. That man gave up at least one home run in every single game that he played. They didn't have any faith in him. That he didn't even start the games that he played in the playoffs. They had other people pitch for him, and then he came in later. And then they didn't even play him in Game 7 when he had an opportunity to. Or was it Game 5, right? Because it was like
yeah.
best of 5. In Game
Mhm.
5 when they had the opportunity to. Like, how do you feel about Shota Imanaga? Like, is he going to be like the sixth starter? You know what I'm saying? Getting extra days rest coming in, or is he even going to play much for the Cubs this year, even though he's making what, $22, $23 million?
Trust and believe. Shota Imanaga will pitch for the Chicago Cubs, and this is going to be a season where he reminds the league of who he is. I think that he had a down year, which pitchers tend to do that. That's fine. But I also know that he has some things that he needed to tweak. Hitters were able to read what he was getting ready to send them. And that caused him a lot of angst. And it caused him, because he had these little tails, it caused him to be able to get hit hard. And when he got hit, I mean, they sent it out the park. It wasn't a double, it wasn't a triple, it was a home run every single time. Here's the thing. Shota Imanaga will pitch this season for the Chicago Cubs. Shota Imanaga will have a good season for the Chicago Cubs. I'm not gonna say great, I'm gonna say good season. But good is good enough if you're the fifth pitcher. Now, we're slowly working Justin Steele back. You still got Colin Ray waiting in the wings, as well as Javier Hassad, who is finally healthy also. Like I said, the Chicago Cubs this season are going to focus on health a lot. That's why you did see them trade Matt Shaw, even though I talked about it and covered it. That's why you saw them, go out and get Alex Bregman. That's why they're going to have multiple guys playing multiple roles. This year, it's about going the distance. So it's not about worrying about, okay, who's your starter rotation, who's your closer, who's this, who's that. We're looking at getting outs. We're treating this as the Dodgers treat every single season under Dave Roberts. It's all about getting those outs. It's all about winning games, whatever it takes to win the games. And the Chicago Cubs are doing that. And like I said, I think that focusing and prioritizing on getting outs versus giving somebody a certain position or giving them a certain this and saying, hey, you this, you're that, you're this, you're that, or a certain title It's about getting outs. And if the Cubs can buy in to that, sky's the limit, man.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and back to the South Side because that was part of the Chicago White Sox issues as well. Is having good, solid, healthy pitchers who you can go out depend on to go out there and give you 130 to 150 innings pitch and win games. Now a lot of the games, like I mentioned last year, were blown because of saves. Right, like Shane Smith, his record should have been much better than what it was last season. And then you got Davis Martin coming back. Sean Burke is going to be okay. You got Jonathan Cannon still trying to get back on the squad. Mike Vassell as well, who played really, really. He was actually the best pitcher for the Chicago White Sox outside of Shane Smith last season. He's going to be fighting for a starting position. So I'm excited to see what it is that the Chicago White Sox are going to do from a pitching perspective to help them get to that 20 to 25 to 30 game improvement, man, because they got some guys waiting in the wings too, man. Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Grant Taylor's going to be playing as well. McDougal, that's who I'm thinking about. Kyle McDougal. And they just traded for this cat named Sandlin, who got some good stuff too. Like the Chicago White Sox have pretty much the same situation that the Cubs have, and that's basically a glutton at the pitching position. And there's a lot of players on this roster that can fight for starting spots, just like it is for the Chicago Cubs.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Cubs play the White Sox. Actually, we open the season against each other, open the spring training against each other this coming Friday. Excited for that. And it's going to be very interesting to see who excels as far as who gets more of an opportunity. Who we're going to see the younger guys probably play a lot more than the older guys. We already know guys like Dansby Swanson and them don't really prioritize spring training like they used to. They just use it more as a tune-up. And then, like I said, we're going to see what happens from there. But again, on the White Sox side, I'm excited to see guys play different positions, see who gets what spots, who's going to be your starters, where you're going to use guys in middle relief, and then who is going to be at the back end of your pitching rotation to try to close out games before you hand the ball over to Sir Anthony Dominguez. So, again,
we know Grant Taylor's going to be one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, and then the cool part about the way the White Sox set themselves up is not only did you go out and you signed good established pitchers, but what you can do is you can use those guys. So let's say things don't swing your way, health doesn't go right? You then can turn around and trade at the deadline some of those more established pitchers to teams that are vying for a World Series or think they have an opportunity to go up against the Dodgers. And what? From there, you honestly free up cash and you get a bevy of young talent and you keep restockpiling that young talent until you find the missing antidotes to finally compete.
Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna happen. Like the Eric Fetties of the world and so on and so forth. They're gonna be trade pieces for sure. But the main person, and we'll switch topics here to who we're most excited to see in spring training for our respective clubs, right?
Sure.
Obviously for the Chicago White Sox, obviously we're looking to see what Munetaka Murakami can do, bro. He's gonna be the first baseman there. We've had a dearth at first baseman since Jose Abreu
Since y'all became the ops.
unceremoniously. Yeah. We sent Andrew Vaughn to the Milwaukee, but he wasn't really good for the White Sox. He went to Milwaukee and just exploded.
You could have fooled me.
He was terrible for the White Sox, bro. He was hitting high velocity ground balls, like exit velocity ground balls. Like it was ridiculous. He went over there and figured out maybe it's the hitting coach, or maybe it was just getting the stink of losing 100 games over and over again out of his system. But Murakami's going to be taking over at first base, and we know he has power. We're going to get to see him in the World Baseball Classic for Japan. He hit home runs for them the last time they did the World Baseball Classic. And then when he was like in his early 20s, he hit 56 home runs or something like that over there in Japan. Now, he was hurt last year, and even though he was hurt last year, he only played 50-some games, and he still hit 24 home runs last season in Japan. So I'm anticipating that this guy blanketed with Kosin Montgomery, those two guys are going to be some tough outs, and he draws a lot of walks. I'm interested to see if he can adjust to the American game, because that's what part of the issue that people were saying about him is that velocity is one of his weaknesses. He does have a high strikeout rate, even though he has a high walk rate as well. Is he going to be able to adjust to the velocity of these fastballs over here in the United States? And I believe he will. I think him and Colson Montgomery going to just be the Bash brothers for the Chicago White Sox this year, bro.
I like that. I like that nickname. That'd be cool. That'd be cool for y'all, man. Over on the north side, we know we're getting out of our older guys. We know what we're gonna get out of Nico, out of Dansby, out of Alex, out of Michael Bush. We know we're gonna get out of Carson Kelly, who's pretty much gonna catch every day. For the most part, him and Miguel Amaya are gonna kind of trade off a little bit catching duties. However, I want to see how Matt Shaw looks in the outfield, playing in the outfield, because he's going to give PCA, he's going to give Seiya Suzuki, and he's probably going to give Ian Happ some rest. Now, he, like you said, he's a natural athlete. I also want to see what the young man Jackson Wiggins is going to do. He got an invite to spring training. He's a pitcher. Now, again, he's next up. Now, we already seen what Cade did last year when he was brought up and how he basically became unhittable after the All-Star break. So right up until his injury. So I'm very interested to see what Jackson Wiggins looks like. And again, I want to see what some of these other people that we have that we have, some of these other pitchers that we've signed, and see if some of them can earn some type of roster spot. See what our bullpen looks like. Again, like I said, the Chicago Cubs, we kind of know what we're getting out of our everyday guys. So, like I said, I'm more so looking towards our young guys to see what they're going to bring. See if the Jaguar Kevin Alcantara can carve out a spot for himself on the bench this season and be with the Major League club, or if he's going to start off in AAA. Very interested to see what happens.
So I'm also looking forward to checking out what Luis Angel Acuna can do for the Chicago Cubs. Now, we all know that we traded Luis Robert Jr. This past a couple months ago now, and he was the last remaining cog in the machine that was supposed to be the contending Chicago White Sox when they had Tim Anderson and Eloy Mendez and Dylan Cease and all those guys, and they were supposed to be World Series contenders. It's hard to believe that 3 seasons ago the Chicago White Sox were going into the season expected to compete for a World Series, and pretty much that same year Tim Anderson got knocked out and things ain't been right ever since. But getting back a player with the capabilities of Luis Angel Acuna. Say that again.
Happens fast, don't it?
You said what, Brody? Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Now, Luis Angel Acuna, he was with the Mets, and he wasn't able to really carve out a everyday starting position because they didn't need him. He has an opportunity to come out to the Chicago White Sox and play center field, and Brooks Baldwin is kind of going to be the everyman for the Chicago White Sox. Maybe he'll be center field, maybe he'll go down and play third base. It depends on what they need. But in the Venezuelan Winter League, Big Mike, he had 40 hits, 8 home runs, and 4 of those home runs came in one game, 26 walks in 39 games. So, listen, he, at least in the Venezuelan Winter League, he looks like he's ready to come and contribute to the Chicago White Sox. And we know he's also going to steal bases, so on and so forth. They use him as a pinch runner a lot in New York. I'm expecting the Chicago White Sox to give him a bigger opportunity to contribute to this club.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see I don't see why he couldn't. I think he absolutely can come in and immediately give you guys that boost that you need. Again, all about guys coming out there just playing the game. Baseball is a long season. And if there's anything I've learned after watching last season is don't get comfortable in the first act of the show. Like I said, there are 4 in my eyes, there are 4 quarters in the baseball season. There's the first quarter, and then there's the second quarter, then there's the third quarter, which is the dog days of summer, then the fourth quarter, if you're lucky enough to play in it, that's the playoffs. And I think what we saw from the Chicago Cubs is they got very comfortable with their lead and started losing games, and Kyle Tucker got injured, had some bad luck in injury land. But the Brewers went on a stupid, ridiculous 2 14-game win streaks, and that basically won them the division. So for both teams, if you're a White Sox fan, don't be discouraged if you start out slow, because you can gain momentum. These are young guys. They're going to take their lumps. If you're the Chicago Cubs, don't get complacent if you start off high. We start the actual season against the Nationals, which is a team we should sweep. But at the same time, you cannot get complacent. If we, like I said, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, but also you have to make sure that you don't drop games to Colorado. You don't drop games to, winnable games to the Pirates. You don't drop winnable games, like I said, to the Cardinals and other teams like that. Again, baseball is one of those things where anybody can win on any given day, but the good teams take care of business. And the Chicago Cubs
Yeah,
got to
the,
take
the
care of business.
rule of thumb is you got to win 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. You can't
Yep.
have 3, 4, 5 game losing streaks. You definitely shouldn't have situations where you're blowing multiple saves, which brings me to my last player that I'm looking forward to seeing in spring training, even though he's a little bit older, and that's Sir Anthony Dominguez. He's going to be coming to the Chicago White Sox with a ton of experience. And I'm surprised that he even decided to sign with the Chicago White Sox to be 100. Like, I was just as surprised about him as Mooney Taka,
Right.
because it's like he is a World Series pitcher. He pitched last season in the World Series. He pitched for the Phillies in the World Series. He pretty much could have gone anywhere he wanted, yet he decided to come to the Chicago White Sox and provide stability in that closer position, which is something that we struggled at last season. I mentioned it earlier. 24 blown saves. Hell, if they had 2 or 3 less blown saves, they would have lost less than 100 games. So you're looking at a situation where him and along with Anthony Kay, Grant Taylor, and a few other players that they brought in, this Chicago's bullpen situation has improved immensely. But it starts and ends with Sir Anthony Dominguez. He has to stay healthy, but if he can provide a stabilizing force out of that bullpen, and he's a shutdown closer where, okay, we got this. We got a 2-3 run lead going into the ninth inning, and we can go ahead and close this game out. I'm very excited to see how good he looks in the spring training and then going into the regular season.
Absolutely. On the north side, I look at Hunter Harvey, Phil Mayton. I look at re-signing Caleb Tealbar. I look at also Hobie Milner. These are all bullpen pieces that Chicago Cubs signed this last past winter for this coming season. And again, these are all great additions to our bullpen because we did lose a lot of our bullpen pieces. So we're going to need to see what these guys can do. But since you mentioned closers, Craig Counsell came out already earlier this week and said who the closer is for the Chicago Cubs. It is none other than Danny Palencia. And Daniel Palencia will be our closer this season. So while you guys on the White Sox have an established closer, we have a young man that is still figuring out how to close games. He had 22 saves last season for the Chicago Cubs, looking to have many more this season for our team.
So speaking of closing games, we'll close this episode out soon. I just want to have one last topic, and that is
Sure.
to discuss the managers. Now, last season, Will Venable took over. I mean, like Pedro Grifal, like, can we even call him a manager, bro? Like, he was such a terrible, terrible baseball person. I don't even want to call him a coach or a manager. He was just a baseball person, a placeholder that came in and made the Chicago White Sox the laughing stock of Major League Baseball. And I'm still mad that they fired him in September of 2 seasons ago because I think he should have gone down with the ship. He had no business being paid to sit at home. But I digress. Will Venable came in and steered this ship in the right direction. They lost 120 plus games the season prior to him coming, and he improved the team by 19 games. I'm expecting Will Venable to have his fingerprints all over this organization again and manage the Chicago White Sox to respectability. I do expect the Chicago White Sox to finish at least 500 or better, and it's all going to depend on how aggressive and how solid of a managing job my man Will Venable can do. But we do know that not everybody's on the Craig Counsell train now. Like there's a lot going on the north side with the manager. They brought him over here to get them over the hump, unceremoniously fired. What was his name? The former player that was coaching the Cubs.
David Ross.
David Ross. David Ross was a fan favorite now, and they fired him basically via Twitter over and brought Counsell in to take over this team, push them to higher heights. How you feeling about Craig Counsell coming into spring training and going into the season?
Craig Counsell's job for right now is safe. Now, I will say this. If the Chicago Cubs don't necessarily win more this season, you may start to feel his seat heat up just a little bit. But remember, he's the highest paid manager in all of baseball. So the expectation, I mean, he's paid higher than Dave Roberts, who was the Dodgers manager. So you look at this and you say to yourself, okay, you were brought here, stolen in the middle of the night from our competitor for a reason. You need to do a better job of managing your bullpen and managing your starting pitching. Now, you got a blessing last year with Matthew Boyd somehow turning into almost a Cy Young candidate, and then Colin Ray being able to hold you down as far as starting pitching as much as they did. However, this season, I believe the focus has been more so on making sure that we have, because it is going to be very important pitching-wise to have as much and as many pitchers and arms as possible. As for Craig, you will be judged on how you manage those arms.
And it not just the arms, bro, because like the Michael Busch situation last year was weird. Like Michael Busch had basically an all-star season without being an everyday player for the Chicago Cubs, and he refused to play him against left-handed pitchers, if I'm not mistaken, even though he was hitting left-handed pitching pretty well. So some of his positional player situations, because like now you're gonna have what's his name? Suzuki is gonna be back out in right field, correct? So and he's gonna basically be your designated hitter as well, coming off an all-star season himself. So Craig Counsell got more to deal with than just those arms out of the bullpen.
So I look at that situation. Craig Counsell has already come out and stated Michael Busch will be an everyday player for the Chicago Cubs. He says he's earned that, which I agree. I expect Michael Busch not only to be an everyday player this season, I expect Michael Busch to all-star and win the Gold Glove for first base this season. I'm putting laying both those charges on him. I believe personally he should have been both last season. But last season was his coming out party. This season, he reestablishes himself and shows everybody who he is. Make no mistake about it, too. The young man, Moises Ballesteros, he is going to be the everyday DH for the Chicago Cubs this season, and he's going to hit bombs. 25 home runs or more for Moises Ballesteros this season if he gets DH pretty much every day.
Over Suzuki?
Suzuki will be out in right field primarily. You're going to see Matt Shaw kind of platoon cover positions. Guys need days, but he's going to be on the bench also a little bit more than usual.
I'm talking about the DH though. Like, you think Ballesteros is going to be the DH over Suzuki?
Yeah, because Suzuki's going to play right field majority of the time.
Okay.
So, like I said, yeah, Suzuki's going to play a lot of your right field. And
but even if he's playing right field, he can still play DH.
Well, yeah. I mean, but on the days he's not playing right field. So let's say on the days that Matt Shaw will play right field, say Suzuki will DH. It just depends matchup wise, and that's where managing comes into really, like I said, where things are going. Sometimes Craig gets too analytical, and I think sometimes he depends too much on the stat sheets, and I think that's a lot of what what's the word I'm looking for? It basically stopped or stunted the growth of Michael Busch last year. Was looking at the stats. Oh, well, stats say he don't hit well against lefties, so you probably should bench him. And it's like those statistics. Sometimes you got to let baseball players be baseball players and figure it out. And I think this season, Craig Counsell needs to loosen the reins on some of those guys that have earned it. Give some of those other guys the Ian Happ treatment. He don't say nothing to Ian Happ. Ian Happ can go out there and bat 201 for 2 months, and he's going to be out in left field every single day. I think that, Michael Busch type of treatment too, where, he's a quality first baseman. He's going to give you many great defensive plays at first base, get a lot of outs at first base. And on top of that, like I said, he hits bombs, man. He on a team that had Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki, he hit the most home runs last season over them and PCA.
And he played, 130 games? Like
availability. He was there. You needed him, he was there. Didn't matter.
Yeah. He got to get to at least 150 games this year, though, bro. At least.
Absolutely.
They got to play him every day. All right, man. This is going to be a fun season. We're going to play the Cubs the Chicago White Sox and Cubs play Friday, the spring training. So keep the vitriol and the frothiness to a minimum, guys. You
That's
can't
right,
take
Steve-O.
too much away from spring training. But we do have a lot to watch for. Of course, you can find me at Chicago White Sox Central, and then of course you got Big Mike on Chicago Cubs Central. Big Kev from the Shy over on X, Big Kev from DACHI, as well as Sox Central Pod, and then Shy White Sox Central at gmail.com. And then Mike, where can they find you, all your stuff?
Absolutely. Everything is Chicago Cubs Central or Shy Cubs Central Pod on X. Find us over on Instagram, both. You can find White Sox and Cubs over on Instagram, both at Chicago Cubs Central Podcast and Chicago White Sox Central Podcast over on Instagram. And of course, you guys also shout out to everybody that can find us over on Spotify as well. Spotify and Apple.
Yeah.
You guys download and give us a 5-star rating over there too. It really, really does help. And of course, thank you to everybody on YouTube, whether you are on Chi-Town Sports Central, Cubs Central, or White Sox Central viewing this. We appreciate you. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment. Leave your thoughts below.
Oh yeah, we're looking forward to getting into some mailbags this year too. So
Yeah.
I got to get a new phone number for Chicago White Sox Central because
No, me too.
They keep taking us down, but we good for the season, y'all. Appreciate the love and support, man. Next week, Big Mike is going to be taking charge. We'll just flip-flop each week with the CrossTown Convo on Sundays or whenever we get a chance to do them. So I had the intro and outro this week, but next week, Chicago Cubs Central will be running the show. We look forward to seeing you guys. Appreciate the love, support. And it's Big Kev holding it down for the South Side. We're going to holler at you guys next time. Peace.